Hi folks, with Tacitus. Tacitus today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about what I believe is the biggest civilizational threat to the West, and that when I say the entire West, particularly the Anglosphere, but the entire West, the civilizational threat posed by mass migration from the Indian subcontinent. India being the biggest player in that. They're now the most populous. I think only a few weeks ago they became the most populous nation on earth with 1.44, I think it is, billion people. And the thing about India is that nearly everybody in India, wants to, or the vast majority of the population, they can't wait to get out of India and move to the West. And there's not a person in India. They're strangely, in a very childlike, almost pathetic way, they're all very aspirational. That they all seem to believe that great riches and wonder are just around the next corner, like the unicorn or something, just around the next bend. If only they can get out of India and get a job in the West. And so they want to get out of India, and the Indian government wants their surplus population to be gone. They'd be happy to get rid of 300 to 400 million people in a heartbeat if they could, and more than that if it was possible. The globalists sort of salivate over the cheap labour and the fact that every Indian that arrives in the West will not integrate and will not assimilate into Western population. So it becomes another nail in the coffin of Western culture and so on and so forth. Because it's only Western culture that wants to share power with its elites. Only Western culture wants that. They want to be able to vote, select their government, select their representatives, have courts of law, have clearly codified laws. That's a white person's gig. Outside of the white diaspora, you don't get that. Outside of the Western white diaspora, you don't get it. You may call Romanians white, but they don't really, or Bulgarians, they're not really into that. It's a uniquely white Western culture, Britain, United States, France, and so on. So the desire for the globalists to eradicate that part of white Western culture, their determination to do that is it's their priority numero uno. And mass migration from these illiterate third world peasant shitholes, quite apart from the cheap labour, delivers that outcome as a secondary sort of process for the globalists. But I just want to have a look at India. Now I've been looking at a few. As you know, I'm no fan of Indian migration, not because I care one way about it, but they refuse to assimilate, they refuse to integrate, even after several generations, and several generations being Western born. And they think they're terribly entitled, chip on shoulder. Even when they're like the third, fourth generation, they're still the same. They only send back to the village of their ancestors for husbands and brides. They refuse to, condone any of their offspring associating with non-Indians. They'll only do business with other Indians. They'll only do business outside of the Indian diaspora if they've just absolutely got no choice, and so on and so forth. So they create a state within a state, and they want special entitlements, for that state within the state. So they're about as a corrosive form of migration as you could possibly dream of. And we see this whether it be in Sri Lanka, where the Indian minority there insisted on special treatment and special handouts, special benefits, and started a campaign of terror when they didn't get it. Or you saw the same thing in, say, Fiji, where the Indians decided to just take over and cut the local population out, and there was effectively a coup d'etat of sorts there with the local population. Hey, hold on, you're not coming in here and say, because even after 7 generations of being Fijian born, the integration rate is like 1%, or somebody even said it was 1.5% after 7 generations. I mean, so this shows they're incapable of assimilating and integrating, and they want their own special arrangement. And there was I knew some people who'd come to Fiji in the early 1860s from India, and they then migrated from Fiji to Australia in the late 1980s, I think it was. And so I met them, and they insisted they're Indian. Even though they've been outside of India for, as I say, 6 generations in Fiji and I think 2 generations in Australia, but no, they're Indian. Hey, so I think they're as bad as corrosive as a migrant as you could possibly get, because for those reasons. Now, in addition to that, they perceive themselves as being morally, culturally, and spiritually superior to the Westerners. Now, that gives them a sense of, I don't know, well, arrogance, I suppose, but probably as much as arrogance, more conceit, that they are the ones that should be in charge. Now, if you look at the Hindu nationalist websites, they openly salivate over the thought that in England and Australia and even in the United States, or particularly England, Australia, New Zealand, the Indians will be in the majority there within a generation or two, and that they will decide what goes and what doesn't go. They will decide who gets what benefits and so on. So anyway, and I don't know why they perceive themselves so superior, because India is, a fucking, shithole basket case, and that is, has multiple daily riots. It's out of control. I mean, on what basis they perceive that they have some sort of superior status is quite beyond me. But maybe they do. Maybe it's so sort of spiritual that it's beyond my comprehension or something. But there you go. That's now. This globalist view: cheap wages, cheap wages, cheap wages. If cheap wages were the source of wealth, then every low-wage country in the world would be rich. But in fact, it's the reverse. Every low-wage country in the world is a shithole basket case. So low wages aren't the thing that's making wealth. Far from it. Or far from it, that in isolation, that would be the key ingredient. Similarly, Indians are supposed to be so terribly clever. They do so well at exams, and they do so well at school, and they're brilliant at university and so on. Well, if that's the case, then why don't they express that brilliance in India? Why is it they only suddenly become brilliant when they come to the affirmative action West? Surely that brilliance would manifest itself in India, but it doesn't. Now I had a look at a few sort of documentaries about India, and looked at some of the postings Indian citizens in India make about the place and their observations. Now, they believe that their society is totally dysfunctional. They believe their government is utterly corrupt and useless. They believe none of the public services work as they're supposed to. They believe that there's outrageous inequality throughout society, and they believe that in effect, India is a failed state in many ways. Now, you could say, well, gee, they got a space program. They can't be a failed state. But you walk across dead bodies in the street, and lots of them. People can't get the most basic of medical procedures, and yet they can land rockets on the moon or something. So that would be, I would think, a misallocation of resources, or certainly in my view. Why aren't you spending the money to help your own people? But rather than help their own people, the Indian government, in connivance with the globalists, by the way, so hey, we won't do anything to help our own people. We'll just export them to the West. We'll just get rid of all these hundreds of millions of people. Now, when you look at the amount of people, and this includes the Indian subcontinent, that want to leave, get out of India and get to the West, there are more of them than there are Western citizens. So they would swamp the entire West. Now, they only want to go to the wealthy Western countries, not the poor ones. They're not queuing up by the gazillion to go to fucking Bulgaria or something. They want to go to the rich Western European countries and North America and so on. Now, if you look at the population, the rich sort of Western population, you're looking at 650 million, say 700 if you want to be generous, million. But out of the but there's more than, there's 900 million Indians want to get out of India, and there's only 700 million white Western wealthy people. Now, if those 900 million get to the West, they will turn the West into a shithole basket case, a poor, fucked up shithole basket case. That's the effect these people would have. They've got no concept of that. Many of them are simple peasants and so on. But now, if you add in then the populations of Pakistan, Bangladesh, and that sort of thing that are in the wider Indian subcontinent, you'd easily have 1.6 billion people that want to leave that place and come to the West. Now, they don't seem to ask themselves, well, why is my country so fucked up and poor? They don't seem to. They just want to go where the money is, and they have these strange sort of childlike aspirational dreams, like a little kid sort of dreams that one day, I'll be a fairy princess or something. It's that sort of strange aspirational sort of thing where it's not grounded in any reality at all, which why it probably fits in so well with the globalists. But anyway, so having a look at these things, and we need to sort of get our head around how bad India is. Now, how many people apply for a job? For example, there's a job in India. For every job vacancy that exists in India, I mean, wait for this, you need to sort of get your head around this one. For every job vacancy that exists in India, there are over 3,000 applicants. So and they horribly screw their own population. So they said, well, you need, if you're going to apply for the job, you have to be the best. So you have to have like some sort of equivalent of a high school certificate. Now, a lot of the rural peasants, they've done sort of a few years of primary school. They've started school at 6, and by 10 or 11 years old, they're done with school because maybe they're working on the family plot of land, because most of them are living subsistence, agricultural, hand to mouth sort of lifestyles. So they quit school because they're needed to help, bring in the crops or plant the crops or look after the babies that are, because a lot of these people, they have, 8, 9, 10, 11 children, I mean, for Christ's sake, the rural peasants. The minute there's even a smidgen of increased affluence, as in their crop is a little bit better or they get more handouts from the government, they instantly translate that into procreation, instantly, showing just how close they are to the natural world of animals and so on. Over 3,000 applicants for a job. Then they force these people to say, well, you've only finished primary school. If you want a job, you've got to do the equivalent of high school, which means they have to go to these outrageously expensive and bullshit high school, junior high school education centres where they're supposed to be in effect completing in 1 year, completing their junior high school exams, that sort of equivalent. As you can imagine, there's corruption is rife, and so then they get to reapply. So you're looking at people who are able to, they've applied for, or only been able to apply, assuming you need a junior high school as a minimum, they're only able to apply for, they've applied for 2 jobs over 5 years, because that's the only job opportunities they've got. So you need to sort of put this in perspective. Over 3,000 applicants for each job opening. I mean, fuck. When you look at these school classrooms in these Indian cramming schools, a room that could say comfortably hold 30 people has 150 people in it. So you need to conceive that. They live in spaces where each person has an average of 1.5 square meters of space. They live in places where there's no light, no reliable light switches, and the power is not reliable. So they're using like kerosene lamps, candles, that sort of stuff. There may be, out of a 3-floor building, there may be 1 toilet and shower that that doesn't work all the time. There's no running water. They have a 2-burner gas stove in their little 1.5 square meter sort of space. And, in first world terms, it's your gas you're looking at going, holy fuck, is that how these people live? But they live in a poor dirt, basket case shithole. So if they want to do something about, why don't they fix their own country up? Why are they so keen to say, well, we won't fix our own country up. What we'll do is we'll export all these fucking peasants off to the West. Now, this 3,000 applicants per job, I don't believe that would apply to, say, something like top-end programming, for example. It's hard to believe that you'd have, maybe it is, I don't know, but the implication certainly suggests or implies that it's lower level jobs, jobs that people with a junior high school diploma can access. But there are endless riots when you have job application things, because the view is by the Indians themselves that those that have a bit more money than the others, or have wealthier families, are bribing the the employment consultants, whatever you call them, the HR people, are bribing them to say hire their son or daughter rather than someone else. So when you look at or listen to these Indians, they believe that everything is corrupt top to bottom. There is no merit. Yet as soon as they come to the West, what's the first thing they want to do? Go run around bribing people. I mean, it's astonishing. And really, affirmative action favouring Indians in say Australia, that's just another form of corruption, isn't it? I mean, what's the difference? They're able to just use the value of the colour of their skin as a form of bribery to get a job. When hiring was by merit, and when school performance, passing exams was by merit, Indians didn't do any good. It was only when affirmative action came in that suddenly we're surrounded by brilliant Indian students, but they didn't exist before affirmative action. The same goes for employment. Before affirmative action and race gender quotas, Indians found it very difficult to get work. The only job they could get were floor sweepers and taxi drivers. But since affirmative action came in, particularly in the public service, Indians are now being gifted jobs the minute they walk off the fucking plane or the boat. So my view is that you don't realise how bad things are in India, how overcrowded it is, and how much of a surplus population they have. And the Indian government is fanatically motivated to get rid of that surplus population. But on top of that, the people talk about the one person in the wider family or the village, that they see that if they can just get one of their number, and it could be a family, if you include like cousins and second cousins, these sort of things, which they do, you can have 100 people in the fucking family. And then, that pretty much constitutes the whole village. They're all related. Now, they're in their cognizance, if they can get just one person into a cozy job in India, but preferably get them to the West by whatever means, any bribery, any corruption, any treachery, any deception, anything is permissible to get one of your family members or the tribe over to the West. And then not only can that person send money back to the village, and just put some perspective on it. The daily expenditure of a 100-person village is a daily expenditure, is about $125. So if someone's got a job in the West and they're living, very simply as they would have in India, they can send back $100, a few $100s a week. And that makes an astonishing difference to the quality of life in the village. But then that extra money is immediately put into procreation. So they go back to where they were because they've got all the extra mouths to feed and to clothe and to look after, and more cramming into the small space, higher mortality rates and so on. Other things, go with India. You look at it in disbelief, and these things don't get reported in the media. There was a huge campaign by the Indian government to reduce the rate of population growth, understandably so. So they started a program of mass sterilisation. So they would, to tie women's fallopian tubes to make procreation impossible. They figured this was the most reliable way. They've tried giving the pill, the pill contraceptive. That doesn't work because they need to employ so many people to explain to these illiterate peasants how it works, and they forget. I forgot, and even people that are getting these contraceptive benefits, which are given for free, it doesn't interrupt in the slightest their ability to procreate. So they're either not taking them or not using them. Some of them are getting it and then selling it on to other people, and so they're misusing it. Then you get the idea of, say, the use of condoms or sterilization and so on. These have varying sort of effects. So they give gifts to, or did give gifts to women in these particularly the high procreation areas. They give gifts to them if they'll have their tubes tied. But then rather than employ properly qualified medical personnel, again, it was considered to be a prestigious job. So massive corruption played a role. So you got all these people that are bribing the hirers and the recruiters to get jobs as so-called medical experts to perform these operations, the tying the tubes operation. And they were supposed to be qualified, but none of them were, or so very few of them were. So you had thousands upon thousands of women who were dying because of botched medical procedures. So the government quietly dropped this. Why this wasn't an international headline, I don't know. But it demonstrates that Indians, when left to their own devices, will fuck everything up. Everything will get fucked up. The corruption, the bribery, the incompetence, you name it. And you look at any of the government programs, it's almost like 2-year-old children were implementing the program. So you're just gobsmacked at how incompetent and inept and useless. Now, these are the people that are supposedly the hardworking, industrious geniuses that are being brought to the West. They're all the rocket scientists and so on. My assertion is that without affirmative action and without the corruption and so on, that Indians wouldn't be would be useless as migrants, as I believe. You'll always get exceptions, but in the main they are. And like anything, you're looking at mathematically. There's a population of 1.4 billion. Of course, you're going to get some bright ones among that. Of course you are, and that's fine. No problem with that. But certainly none of the Indians that I've met and have hired or worked alongside, none of them impressed me in the slightest. And it wasn't for affirmative action, or in the case of me hiring them, getting badgered by the board of directors, they wouldn't have got the job, and I ended up having to fire all of them. So if they are impressive, then they're just not as impressive. I've never noticed how impressive they are. Maybe the impressive ones are go running and hiding as soon as I appear. I don't know. But just looking at that, you need to comprehend that over 3,000 applicants for every fucking job. I mean, that's crazy. So no wonder they want to wear. But they're not exporting cheap labor, which is a benefit. They're not exporting rocket scientists. They're exporting their problems to the West, and they will become our problems in the West. And because of the civilizational divide, which is huge, by the way, they will end up, if they come in sufficient numbers, they end up destroying the Western culture. And the wealthy, successful West, they'll end up destroying Western culture, which I think is what the globalists want. You've been a Tacitus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.